Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Guaranteed Refractive Revenue Campaign. We are unbelievably excited to be able to share this information with you. It is literally hot off the presses. It is something of a revelation, really. It is, when I first understood and heard this, I was absolutely wowed. So can't wait to get things moving. Just going to make sure that everybody is, all good. So, how to ethically and safely generate refractive revenue right now. Let's actually set the scene first of all, okay? And I think probably this, the most important thing that we need to understand is where we are, where we've come from, and to understand a little bit about where things are going to go, okay? So you might recall, some of you on this webinar would have been with us way back, that feels like an eternity ago, March 24th, when we shared with you this chart. And this chart was the 5 phases impacting your practice revenue during the coronavirus crisis. And we went through the chart. I won't go through the whole chart now. Basically, there are these phases probably to you now are more familiar to you now than they were when we first presented them, because everybody seems to have adopted this terminology and indeed this sense of where things are. So we started off with denial. We went quickly to panic. I think you all understand what that was like. Then we went into boredom. And now we're into the hope phase. And the interesting thing about the hope phase is that we are now in a position where we're being told that we could possibly reopen. And that's very energizing, and it's very, it makes us feel good. But there's some things to worry about here. It's not a perfect a situation. So we got to be a little bit careful in terms of how we manage this reentry. And we're here to give you the best advice we possibly can to provide you with a plan to manage this reentry as ethically, safely, and as profitably as possible. We're not going to get into the normal, but there's lots been said. We have a whole webinar planned on how to get into that. Right now, we're talking about the hope phase. So really, let's begin by introducing who we are. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think many of you know us, but for those of you who don't, the 3 of us have a combined experience of 55 years in the refractive industry. So all of us have been working really with practices in the trenches for the last 20 years, which means that we've handled hundreds, actually probably thousands by this stage, of phone calls. We've sat in on ride-alongs, on consultations, done consultations, trained clinic staff, everybody from receptionists through to testers, through to optometrists, through to surgeons. So we've been in the trenches working with you side by side for the last 20 years. So we've got a lot of experience. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that. You're welcome to look up any of us online and kind of get a sense for the type of practices that we have. We have many, many, many video testimonials from many happy surgeons online. You can find out all about us. We won't spend time on that. Maybe we can just give these guys an idea of the footprint and where we work and how we've kind of applied these models that we're going to be sharing with you today. So we've taken all of our experience over the last 20 years and really tested it with different types of business models. So we've worked with everything from high volume practices with sort of the lower cost side of things, tested it with that business model. We've worked with higher value practices that have a higher price point and have lower volume. So we've really tested how these practices work in different economies, different countries, and different types of business environments. And so what we're going to sharing with you today is very specific, but we wanted to share with you that this has been tried in many, many different environments. So this is not sort of something that we're just sharing with you today on a whim. So I think that's all I want to say about us today before we move on. Did anybody want to say anything else?
No, I'm just happy to be here and happy to share all the stuff that we've learned. It's been quite enjoyable working in the in the elective medical space, and just I'm really excited about sharing this program to people.
Cool.
What I've been wowed by is the fact that we've seen all sides of this crisis, every different country at every different phase. We're getting lots and lots of good feedback from all these different countries, and we're almost able to predict the future, knowing how things are going to happen elsewhere based on where we've been. So listen, what to expect at the end of this webinar, right? So we're all here, we gathered you here really to provide you with something of an opportunity, of course. I mean, that's what webinars are all about. You know, there's an educational component, and let's be frank, right? We're going to ask you to jump on top of an opportunity. But here's the thing. no one's going to expect anybody to make a decision at the end of this webinar. Okay, that's really key. Okay, we're here to present an idea, and we're here to present an option for you. If you think that it makes sense, if you feel like this can fit like a glove, then absolutely we are going to, absolutely embrace the opportunity to help you. Okay, but look, really what we're trying to do here is just to figure out whether or not this might be right for you. We're just trying to figure out whether you're a candidate. And if you are a candidate, we're going to give you an opportunity to have a call with us at the end of the webinar, where we can take you through all the ins and outs, answer all of your questions. There might be a few that aren't answered on this webinar, and that's okay. And when we do that, we'll be able to then propose to you a very, very clear view on how to get started. Now, at the end of this webinar, we're going to tell you everything you need to know, that if you wanted to, you could just say, yep, this makes sense for me, let me do it. We'll tell you the price even, okay? So all is going to be revealed, just you wait. But for now, just keep an open mind and just be ready to think whether or not this would work for you. That's all we care about right now. Let's not worry about that other stuff for now, okay? All right, let's move forward. Current challenges. Okay, so we have some finite and indefinite timeline for surgery, right? So depending on where you are in the world, you have been either told that lockdown is indefinite, we don't know when we're gonna come back, or that we might come back in the next couple of weeks, we'll let you know, or some of you, miraculously and somewhat impossibly to believe, are actually opening up already, like right now, as of last weekend. Some of you, of course, who have kind of over the peak and down the valley now, past the crisis hot point, are now fully open. And yeah, that works for you, perfect. So we'll have to figure out how that works as we go. You're at the leading edge of the cash flow crunch. We have probably at this point, the longest time that anybody in your business has suffered without any income for as long as we've known this business, okay? There's never been anything like this, okay? So you're at the absolute worst point today than you've ever been in your whole business history at suffering from a lack of cash. And you're probably struggling right now in lots of different ways. And for sure, there's almost no way to make money, right? I know that some of you are doing emergent, some of you are doing, urgent cases, but really when it comes to refractive surgery or cataract surgery, we know that most of you are just at a non-start. I think the question that many of you probably have been asking yourselves is, can you still provide and protect for your staff? Many of you I know have, fortunately, governments that have provided you with furlough schemes that have enabled you to temporarily let go of staff and have them be paid by the state. Thank goodness for that, because as we all know, ophthalmic staff are very specialized and not easy to replace. So it's super, super helpful for that to happen. But really, we have to start now asking the question, when lockdown lengthens and goes on for so long, are we able to either retain them and are we able to provide for them with the cash that we have on hand down the road? Are we going to be able to actually employ them? Okay, I mean, lucky for you if you got massive deep pockets and a huge bank account. But if you've been kind of like most businesses, which is kind of like month to month to month, that's going to be a real challenge. So are you going to be providing for them? And the other thing too is, when you bring them back, are you going to be able to protect them? Because this disease is still out there. This virus is still out there. It's not like something magic happened over the last 2 months and all of a sudden we're safe, right? Just because we're reopening doesn't mean that all of a sudden we have nothing to worry about. In fact, in many countries that are reopening, you got the most to worry about right now, okay? So yeah, it's a challenge. Look, we understand it. We get you. We are frustrated. You're bored. You're raring to get back to normal. Your patients probably feel exactly the same way. And so you're probably thinking, the best thing I can possibly do is get out there as soon as I possibly can and treat as many patients as I possibly can, right? Now, the thing is you might be worried that you might not even make it as well. So, it's a question of, I've been thinking about this too. It's like when you reopen, then all of a sudden you got to bring your staff back. Then you got to pay them all because they're no longer furloughed, right? So there's a lot of issues to address. There's a lot of thinking to do. And I'm sure that you're probably struggling to find out what the best way to re-enter the market is. And that's really what we're trying to help you with. I think really importantly, you're probably experiencing an ethical dilemma, okay? And I think all of us have, through the process of shutting down our businesses, sending staff home, probably experienced a smaller portion of this ethical dilemma where we were thinking, am I too early? You know, should I be conservative and get people home as quickly as possible and not expose them to any risk? I think now when you're starting to reopen, this consideration, this dilemma is at a peak. Now you might be thinking, look, I need to reopen. I have to reopen. If I don't get the doors open, then I might not be able to keep this business alive. If not keep it alive, then I'm going to be really, really suffering in the deep, deep red. But the thing is that your commandment as a doctor, before you ever became a surgeon, was to do no harm, right? And we appreciate that and we know that. And that's one of the reasons we love working with surgeons, is because you've got this ethical streak in you that is in 99.99% of the cases, you know, unassailable. But here's the thing, you gotta honor that code. Do no harm to your patients, to your staff, to yourself, and also to your reputation as a responsible actor in your community, okay? Everybody's watching everybody. Everybody's gonna be under a microscope. And woe be the folks who decide to, just because they can, open up earlier than is safe and thereby putting people at risk. And again, it could be your patients, it could be your staff, it could be yourself. And worst of all, it could be your reputation. So that's the current challenge as we see them. Mike, over to you.
Absolutely. And so I think that at this point, to carry off of what Rod said, is that we're really in this situation where we're thinking back to the old life that we were in pre-COVID, and now we're looking into where are things at right now? Where exactly are we going? And in the next slide, we're going to kind of cover what are some of the different, what's that reality that you have in front of you? What are the different alternatives right now that you're going to be facing if you don't do something that enables you to be able to kind of get patients in and be responsible doing it. Rod, if you wouldn't mind, move to the next slide, would be great. So here's some of the alternatives. And so I think we can just go to the next slide as well. Great, okay. So here's what we know is that coming back from COVID, it's going to be a little bit of a slower uptick, especially for the older demographic, is that even if patients are told right now, you can go back in and go to a clinic, how many people feel like they want to be able to go forward and be out in public? And I think about my mother and father-in-law, and they just literally have been in the house for the last almost 2 months. And I think that for those of you on the cataract side, it's going to be that little bit of that slower uptake as people get that confidence to be able to go back in and come into their regular lives, if you will. The other side of that is that if you think about, and some clinics have said, well, how do we expect marketing to be, you know, coming out of COVID? And my expectation is that the conversion rates can be, if you're trying to get people into an in-office appointment, the challenge with that is that just people still have that ingrained feeling that they may not actually want to be going into a clinic quite yet. And so the conversion rates, and I call that 7-day magic window. So almost 80% of leads that you acquire that are interested in elective surgery should convert to a consultation within 7 days. Now, the challenge is with COVID, those numbers are a little bit different, especially because you can't actually bring them in for an in-office appointment. So that's where virtual consultations have come in. But think about this one, the third point, is that even when you're open, and even if you're able to do consultations and appointments in your office, you're gonna have to be having a lower capacity. Your ability to see the same amount of patients, it's not gonna happen. Who actually wants to walk into a medical practice and see a full waiting room at this point? Nobody does. And so many of you may be also mandated by where you live to actually have to be having a certain amount of people in your office at one time. So the challenge is that, well, if we know that people need to come in for a consultation prior to surgery, how do we profitably make this all happen given the fact that we have less people in the office? And that's a real challenge that a lot of people are going to be facing. And so, to the fourth point, you're not going to be able to serve the required amount of patients that you need for several months. And I think that that's something that many clinics have maybe thought about, but it's a very, very real challenge. And to be honest, it's kind of feels like it's a little bit all over the place here in the United States. With every state, they're all acting different. It's a little bit of the Wild West. And I think that as a surgeon, as a doctor, it's really important, going back to Rod's point, that we do things that do no harm to our patients, that we want to be able to serve our patients. We want to be able to help them to change their lives in a positive way with elective surgery. The question is, how do you do that in a way, given that you're going to have less capacity? On our next slide, Rod, I'll cover some other points. Just that right now, people are looking just some of those little luxuries. And, I think that if you don't interrupt them about something that's a little bit more higher ticket, it's not going to be in the forefront of their mind. What we do know, and I saw a great article a little while ago about the savings right now in the United States, is at its highest that it has been since the early 80s. So people actually still have reserves and cash, if you will. But for me, I think that if you want to be presenting them the opportunity for elective surgery, you kind of you need to have that conversation with them. You can't just expect them to say, yes, I'm ready to go forward and do it and give you a call. You need to engage with those people in a way that gets their attention. And so the question becomes, how are you going to be reactivating your pipeline? And there's here are the options. Option one is you picking up the telephone, and well, let's be honest, that's very time and labor intensive, and many of you may not actually have any of your staff right now that are able to do that. Secondly, well, let's talk about emails. We all know how emails right now have low open rates, and albeit that they're a little bit higher during COVID because less people are at the office and they're spending a bit more time online. But still, emails, in my experience, 20 to 30%, 30% if you're lucky, but it's usually 20% or lower open rate. So email, to get the attention of people who've already expressed interest in elective surgery with you before, email can be a little bit difficult. And we also have to face that challenge that right now we may have further lockdowns. None of us know what's going to be happening in the fall and in the winter. And so these are some real realities I think that a lot of you right now are facing. And so Rod or Laura, I'd love to hear if either of you have any points you want to add to what I've said here.
No, I think you've summed up the alternative reality very well, and it's looking a little bleak. I mean, certainly we're all excited for the possibility of life getting back to normal, but it's definitely not going to be normal. It's going to be the new normal, and that's pretty much what you've summed up. I think the bright spot in all of this is that despite the problems that we've had, despite the challenging times ahead, there is in fact a solution. And this is precisely what we want to talk to you about today. And I think when I think about the problem that we faced and the problem that we're about to enter, I think about the ideal solution. And what does that look like? If I could paint a picture that tick every single box, what would those boxes be? Okay, so first of all, I want to grab my market's attention, right? Look, the boredom days are coming to an end. We're already seeing a lot more friction in the market. We're also already seeing a lot more interruption in the market. People are starting to realize, okay, we're kind of opening up now, and now it's time to advertise, things like that. But wouldn't it be lovely to be able to grab your market's attention right where they live, right exactly in their pockets, if you will? Now, would it be possible to do this with a limited amount of staff, or even no staff? Is that a possibility? If I could do something that would solve this problem and tick that box, I would love that, because right now I might not have a lot of staff, and this might be a really, really important thing for me to consider. How could I find a way to inject cash flow right now? Right now is when you need it the most, not 2 weeks down the road when you start reopening and seeing one patient in the clinic at a time, not 1 month when you finally sorted out the social distancing protocols and all the protective equipment that is needed. That's, by the way, in short supply, so it's not going to be all of a sudden just here, and certainly not when your government decides to finally reopen. When finally we all deem it's much safer. How are you going to be able to reboot your practice safely? Wouldn't it be nice if we had a solution that could reboot things in such a way where we're not putting people at risk? Wouldn't it be nice to be able to do this at a time when expenses are as low as you can get them? And what I mean by that is, if you've furloughed staff, if you've let some people go, and maybe as well, some of you might be fortunate enough to have deferred rent payments or mortgage holidays. If that's the case, your outflows are the lowest they're going to be. When lockdown is lifted, all of a sudden, they're going to go right back up. Wouldn't it be lovely to be able to get some real business right now while your expenses are as low as they possibly can be, so it can really make a difference? And lastly, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a solution that allowed you to properly reopen start seeing patients, bringing staff back, getting everybody back, re-entering society and entering the world, and allowing you to do no harm. Wouldn't that be great? So if you could tick off all of these things, would you agree, and this is rhetorical, but wouldn't you agree that that would be an ideal solution? And that would be exactly what we'd all love to do. Yeah, potentially generate income as safely as possible and get back into the business flow without putting anybody at undue risk. I think so, and I hope you agree. Guys, does this make sense? I think it does. So look, I'm going to turn it over to Mike, who's going to explain how this works. This is, in fact, the main event.
Excellent. And so what we have put together for you is, and we're going to talk about, is what we call the Guaranteed Refractive Revenue Campaign. So in short order, here's how it works, is that we have a chance, we sit down, we connect with you, we find out, we talk to you about your list, if you will. And so we've got two different groups. Group number one are those people that showed interest, but didn't actually schedule their initial consultation. They maybe took a self-test, they Facebook lead ad, or whatever it might be. They expressed interest, but they didn't schedule a consult. Second one is that bucket of people who did come in for a consultation, but didn't actually go forward and schedule their procedure for whatever reason it might have been. We've got some pretty awesome software that enables us to send that personalized text to those people to really find out whether or not where they're at, and if they are interested in laser vision correction or whatever elective procedure that it is that you wanted to let them know about. And really the goal of that, and letting them know that there's an offer, that, hey, this is right now, given our circumstances, is an opportunity for you to get a savings that is good for you and good for us, if you will. And so we've wordsmithed it. We've tested a lot of different ways on how to be able to send that out to a prospective interested patient. And so we've kind of nailed that down to find out what is going to get us the highest amount of people to say that they're interested. From that, we then send that interested people an invitation to a phone call. And on that phone call is really where our goal is to be able to convert them and to provide them with that opportunity to prepay for their procedure. And this is something that we will be able to train you on how to actually be able to handle that phone call. So in its essence, the real magic of this is, and there's automation built into this. It's pretty amazing software that we'll be able to show you when we have a chance to connect. But to me, what it's doing, the real magic is the texting aspect of it. Is because if you think about our cell phones right now, nobody really answers email as much, but text message really, really works. And I think that right now people are at home and you can get their attention right now. And so I think Nick, I'm not sure if who is one of the architects of this, if you actually wanted to add any points that I may have missed. Mr. Nick Sudhouse, any thoughts, my friend?
Yeah, I mean, you summed it up nicely. What really makes this software really work is that, unlike a regular texting application where everyone who you contact is just a contact, everyone's the same, with this software, we actually have a pipeline and we know exactly in what stage everyone is in. So when we text someone the first time, we know, okay, they're in the lead stage. Once they reply, we automatically put them in the interested stage, and the calendar that we use to schedule these people is integrated in the texting application. So we know exactly who said they were interested and who scheduled. And what that allows us to do is, one, accurately track the entire campaign, but more importantly, it allows us to see who showed interest and who didn't actually schedule a phone call. And that way we're able to go back to those people and make sure that there's nothing stopping them from getting on the phone. And that way we really make sure that no one falls through the cracks. So that's an aspect that's really important, because a lot really comes from that follow-up. And also it really saves you a lot of time using a system like this, because all of the calendar aspect, a lot of it is automated to a point where you just have to click a few buttons and you actually are able to generate phone calls. And it's really, it's extremely satisfying to see a wave of text go out, and then within minutes really see how that calendar is filled up with phone calls. So yeah, that's kind of what I have to add. I don't know if there's anything.
No, that's great. And I think
about.
That's great, Nick. One of the things that I alluded to earlier, and I really want to take a second and to drive home, is that, like anything, it has to, in my mind, I'm all about the win-win, and this also has to be a win-win for the patient. So what are we asking? We're asking something extraordinary from them, which is to ask them to prepay for their procedure. And in return, they want something extraordinary from us as well. And I think that that's where that incentive, monetary or otherwise, comes into play. And I think that is how this works. And to me, having been in this industry for quite some time, this is probably one of the most perfect campaigns at the perfect moment that I personally have ever seen. It is, we'll go into results a little bit later. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I've been very, very pleasantly surprised within a week of launching this, the types of results that we've been able to get for clients of ours. It's astounding. Rod, Laura, anything that you wanted to add to the slide, or anything I've said so far?
No, I think you've done really well. I mean, I think that we cannot stress enough how you really do need to do this right, and that it needs to be right for your clinic, and we'll go into that. But this is a big part of that. You need to be understanding this exchange. It's a value exchange. And I think what's really wonderful about it is that it is win-win, and not in a cheesy way. This is because people throw around win-win all the time. But I think what we're saying here is that you obviously are looking to solve those problems that we were talking about at the beginning, in terms of the challenges around cash flow and keeping your clinic going and feeling like you can do that in an ethical way. And I think your patients also are looking for a way to achieve their life goals, and your service is one of their life goals. They have it on their list. They've come in, they're obviously interested. And at this stage, they're now in the sort of boredom and hope phase. They have the time to consider your offer. And so if you present them with this opportunity in their life, on their phone, right in front of them right now, they're going to look at it a lot more seriously. And so if you have something extraordinary to offer them in terms of not your normal deal, but something that is, it's right for the coronavirus time period, they're going to look at that very, very seriously. And that's why we're seeing the great results we are. So for us, this is why we're excited about this. And this is why we're sharing it now. It's very specific for the moment.
Excellent. And Rod, anything that you wanted to add, my friend? I
think the only thing I'd add really is that, some people feel a little bit worried about the word incentive. And I don't want you to worry, because incentive simply means I'm going to give you something that sweetens the pot. And what that can be like is, it can be the most obvious incentive in the world is a discount, right? And I know that a lot of people on this call are going to be like, no, I don't want a discount. I get that. I understand. I actually never advised a client to discount in my entire life. However, these are extraordinary circumstances. And for those clients who are in a position where they need to give a little in order to get more, then it might be a good idea. Alternatively, there's lots of other ways to look at this. Some incentives include things like offering some time on a video consultation with the surgeon, right? It doesn't have to be a long time, but it could be 5 to 10 minutes. That's something they otherwise would probably never get. So that would be really nice incentive. Another very obvious incentive would be, look, chances are with pent-up demand, especially with certain surgeries, it's going to be really, really hard to get a spot when all of a sudden everybody has to come in, and we're also social distancing. So not only are we going to have a tremendous challenge in getting through the backlog, but we're also going to have to slow everything down, because no matter what you do offline, no matter what you do in office, there's just absolutely no way you're going to be able to have high volume days anymore. Not for at least 12 to 18 months until there's a vaccine. And especially with cataract surgery, as Mike alluded to earlier, we got older folks who, I'm sorry, but they're going to be scared. They're going to see, like, they're going to know a lot of people who around them who have passed because of this. So that's going to frighten a lot of people. And I think as well, the other thing too is, millennials are going to be in a bit of a challenging spot as well, because they've been impacted tremendously economically, and they're among the hardest hit. And if they don't see some kind of sweetener here at this point, then maybe they'll never do it. So, this just might be a consideration around the incentive. It doesn't have to be money, but it certainly has to be something that is extraordinary to what you normally do, okay? I think that we're going to get into the next one. Really, I think we do want to talk about results, Mike.
Yeah, now we do.
Yeah, now we do. Yeah, absolutely.
Next slide, right? Next slide. That's
Please
good.
do.
Yeah. Yeah, to me, and actually I have literally on my phone, and I pulled it for, so when I saw this, I actually had, so Nick was in the Alpheon newsletter a couple weeks ago, and had several of my clients that had sent over an article about that to one of Nick's clients that got great results from this. And in my mind, before I recommend anything to anybody, I always like to try it out first. Now, gratefully, I have clients that are always wanted to try new and different things. So I brought it to 2 practices literally last Wednesday, okay? So the results I'm gonna quote to you are from last Wednesday. But before I do that, I'll tell you, what we're seeing consistently is that, so if you look at your list right now, roughly 1% of those people in that big bucket, so this is before you send them out or anything, but 1% of them have been moving to prepaying for their surgery. And so the beauty of this is, like, if you say, well, at 1%, you know, that's not a lot. It is a lot if you're not having to make any of the phone calls and it's all happening automated for you. And literally you're just looking at cash coming into your bank account, if you will. And so let me give you some results from 2 clients. Client A sent out 793 of these text messages. 137 people said that they were interested. 54 phone calls scheduled. Again, this is from last Wednesday. 54 calls scheduled, and they've already gotten 8 surgeries prepaid, right? And client, the second client has a larger list, and they sent out 1,749, so 1,749 sent. 348 people said that they were interested, and 165 phone calls were scheduled since last Wednesday. So that's 165 phone calls their team is having with patients that say, I'm still really interested in LASIK. You've got an offer that is better, you know, that's a win-win for both sides. Tell me about it. And I checked in this morning, and the quote is, we've booked tons of surgery. So I'm like, that to me, I expect that they probably should have got between 15 to 20 surgeries already kind of done on their side as well. I just don't have the updated numbers this morning. But what that means is, like, that's more than they had last Tuesday, right? And so this literally, the speed of implementation on this is very, very quick. And so to me, that's why, coupled with the fact that I've worked with Nick, and so Nick is you know, he's kind of been the architect behind the scenes on this and done a phenomenal job. And I've worked with him for years, and he gets my personal highest of recommendations, which is why we're partnering together on this, and as well as with Rod and Laura. So to me, this is just an amazing, very, very well-timed campaign that ethically allows you to be able to create a win-win benefit for you and for the patients and get results very, very fast. Rod and Laura, do you want to add anything to what I said there?
I'd only ask you to, you know, because sometimes when people hear numbers,
Yeah.
you know, they can kind of like forget to kind of put those numbers into real, you know, results. So could you just give us a sense of the actual, because I think the number one number that everybody's thinking about is
Revenue?
how yeah, exactly, revenue. So
Yeah.
you don't have to be, you know,
Yeah.
you don't have to name names. We're not about sharing personal, you know, business details of any of our clients. We'll never do that. However, we have very specific revenue numbers that people are experiencing. So could you give us a sense for the ones you know?
Yeah, so the one that I gave to you, which had 793 sent, 137 interested, 54 calls scheduled. Now the 8 surgeries that were prepaid, a couple of them were deposits. So their revenue is $17,192. That's great. You know, they've literally got that money in the bank right now. I would expect with client B, I don't have the exact revenue numbers, but I would say it's between $60,000 to $68,000 is what the other client has brought in.
Yeah, that's impressive. I mean, considering that since we began addressing the coronavirus crisis and trying to figure out, even before we made the model that we shared at the beginning, our focus has been trying to identify marketing tactics that our clients can do and can communicate in a way that fits the environment we're in. And one of our solutions that we're looking for are ways for you to make revenue. And we've identified a few so far. And if you've been with us on our previous webinars, we've been looking at virtual consultations and using deposits to create surgical waiting lists, which is also a fantastic way to make revenue. but it's not surgery fee. So when we came across this is a excellent way to shore up your revenue now. And it's the best tactic that we've seen during this situation to allow you to make some revenue now. So this is why we cannot overstate how important a tactic this is at this moment. And we feel that it's a really good opportunity, which is why we're sharing it.
Yeah, and I think as well, I mean, Nick, I'm not sure if you're listening in at the moment, but yeah, if you want to pop in, because you were actually the earliest out of all of us to this, and you know, we're massively grateful for your input on this, because yeah, without the vision, you know, we'd be playing a lot of catch ups. But please, Nick, if you can, without naming names, if you can possibly share with us some of your experiences. Because Nick, you got out right in front, really quite early into the market with a program like this, and you've had perhaps the most opportunity to see the matured results over time.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the largest results we've seen is one client had pre-sold over $130,000 worth of LASIK procedures. One thing I want to note is, like here it says results, we're seeing 1% conversion on list to prepaid sale within a week. I mean, this is within a week. A lot of these calls, they end in a way where the prospect says, hey, sounds really interesting. I still need to talk to my spouse. So there are a ton of opportunities that haven't been followed up on yet. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Also, in a lot of the success of this campaign depends on your list. So if you only have 20 leads, obviously you're not going to get a lot of results. So the success of the campaign is correlated to the size of your list, and then also quality of your list. Who are you sending this? Who are you sending these texts to? Are these people who have been into your office? They will convert higher than a Facebook lead from a year ago, because timing is also important. How old are these leads? Are these fresh leads from this year? So those are all factors that play in. And depending on those factors, you can get a higher conversion rate. Same thing with on the calls. If you have a person that really knows what they're doing on the calls, obviously the close rate will be higher. So it's hard to give exact numbers saying, hey, you'll convert exactly this much, because there are all these factors that influence the results. But overall, I mean, this is really a campaign that is unique in the sense that there is true urgency to the special, because typically when you do specials, the reason why they work well is because they give people a deadline by when they have to make a decision. But typically those deadlines are arbitrary. Whereas with a campaign like this, you can have deadlines that are believable and real. For example, let's say you're closed, you can say, hey, we can get you this price or this offer, as long as you make a decision before we open up. Let's say you've already opened up, then you can say, hey, you get the special as long as you make a decision before, and then like, let's say when you're at full capacity, like when you can fill a waiting room again and there aren't these restrictions. So this is really a campaign that allows you to have true urgency, which is really important for a campaign like this.
Awesome, well said.
Yeah, I think that the key thing here is that we are seeing dramatic results, and we are seeing the type of opportunity here that I don't think it's hyperbole to say that it's actually once in a lifetime. Because I honestly don't believe we're going to see times like this. I hope we don't see times like this again.
Let's hope, yeah.
However, with that said, I do sometimes think, well, if we have lockdown now, what's the likelihood that we might not have lockdown later? So, I have this a little bit of a theory that, governments are kind of playing with us a little bit, where, they keep us inside for as long as they possibly can until we reach a boiling point. and then they let go just to release some stress, and people kind of get out there and re-engage. But then, you know, once we have, they're going to bring us back in, you know, and like, you know, the virus, you know, Fauci, you know, the guy in charge of the approach in the US, he said something that I'll always remember. He says, like, you don't make the timeline, the virus makes the timeline. So, you know, we've got to have to be prepared for that. So with results like these, with results of the nature that Mike has talked about within days, you know, being somewhere like $16,000, $17,000, and with results of the type that Nick just addressed or alluded to, which were over 100,000 in prepaid surgeries, these are incredible results. And we were thinking, you know, how should we price something like this? You know, how should we make this attractive to people, so that, because we understand that, you know, they might not have a lot of cash on hand, but yet at the same time, this is a valuable service. We could charge, you know, by the patient. We could charge a significant amount if God forbid we wanted to profit from this kind of you know problem among people. But we don't, right? So what we want to do is we want to make it fair. And so we've established a price here. You guys see my screen? You all good?
Yep.
So we've established a price here of $3,000 USD. And here's the thing, right? That's compared to the results that we've just talked about right now in our pilot campaigns, because we wanted to make sure this worked before we started to introduce it to people, because the last thing we want to do is offer something that all of a sudden just creates a whole bunch of more disappointment among people. But $3,000 US is what we're charging for it. And I'll tell you in a moment what, you know, all the things that we do in order to, you know, get you the result you're looking for. But here's the thing. We're so confident it's going to work because we've seen it work. If you don't sell a procedure, we'll give you your money back. It's as simple as that. So I would be amazed if anybody on this call is selling a procedure for less than 3,000 US. So if, again, all it takes is one. And if you don't get that, for some reason, you know, you send out a lot of text messages and nobody comes back, and your market is totally different than any other market that we've tested. Okay, fine. You know, we'll sort you out. But here's the thing. We don't think we're going to be given any of this back, mainly because I think everybody who takes us up on this is going to be tremendously successful. So that's where we're at in terms of the investment. So now we'd just like to talk to you a little bit about what happens next.
So,
Laura.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
sure.
Laura.
Yeah. So I think in terms of what I alluded to earlier, this is not, and Nick said this as well, obviously if your list size isn't big enough, you can do the math. So if you think about it, if you've got a list size of 1,000, you're probably going to be looking at 10 surgeries prepaid that's sort of our minimum. That's what we're expecting as a minimum.
Yeah.
But again, we're not guaranteeing anything, but we're expecting that at the very least you'll get one, and that will pay for this, so that it's a no risk opportunity, which is why we've priced it this way. We wanted to make sure it was possible so that you can try it, because we think that if you have a list that's big enough, you should try this. So you obviously need to have a list. There's limits to lists as well. Some people have massive lists. We have to talk about if you go beyond certain numbers in your country. So most people's lists are going to be included in the 3,000. If you have a mega list, we'll talk some more about that. There's text limitations, and we can give you what that is. Every country has their own issue with texting, and there's some governmental regulations differences in the UK between the US, that sort of thing. We can talk about that, but most people I'm saying on this call are probably going to be within the $3,000. It needs to, obviously you need to have mobile numbers. So not every practice actually captures those. So if you've just been building lists, say for example, online, you're just capturing emails, that's not going to work for this campaign. So that might not be a good fit for you. But if you do capture mobile numbers, and you have been keeping a list for some time, and you know who's come in, then we can work with that list. You obviously have to feel comfortable sharing your list. That may go without saying, but I just wanted to mention that. We just want to be fully transparent with what the steps are here. You're going to have to provide the list so that we can manage it and process that data on your behalf. If you are viewing this from the UK or the EU in a GDPR zone, we have you covered. We have a data processor agreement that we have to kind of get going, but basically you have to share your list with us, so you need to be aware of that. And I think, as we mentioned before, you're going to have to offer something of value. So part of what we do with you during the onboarding call, which is really the first step, is to figure out, okay, how does this work with you? What can we find in your practice that we can offer that will really be of value and be of service to patients that have already expressed interest, and will just be that little extra thing to tip them over the edge because they're obviously interested. So we need to give them something of value if we want them to prepay for surgery, which they don't even know the date they're going to get the surgery. So it has to be a suitable value. So you have to be willing to do that. That means you have to be willing to potentially offering some kind of a reduction in incentive. But there are other ways to do it if you're uncomfortable with offering a price incentive, but you do need to be open to that. And you also have to be able to feel comfortable that you can handle the phone calls, because as Mike just said, you know, you will be getting this opportunity. You will be booking a lot of phone calls with people that are interested. So you have to feel confident that you can follow a conversation process, and we'll train you on this, but you need to feel confident that you can do this. It can't just be business as normal. You do have to engage with them in a specific way, which we'll show you how to do, but you have to be comfortable to open to something new and try something new. So I think generally these are the things that might be in the way. So if you can't do these things, then it might not be right for you. But if you can, let's share with you how you can actually make this happen. So in terms of the next steps, we've made it really simple because we don't expect you to decide today. As we said at the beginning, you don't have to, you know, get out your credit card, go crazy. We want to talk to you and make sure it's the right fit for your practice. We really want it to be the right fit for you because I think it's a good decision, but we really need to talk and go through. We've got a bunch of questions, just like with candidates for surgery. We need to find out if you're suitable, basically, if you're a candidate for this. So there are some things that will rule you out, as I mentioned. So right now, to just get that first step going and find out if you're suitable, if your practice could make this work and actually come out the other side with a cash injection done ethically, which is fantastic. All you need to do is scan this QR code on the right. And then what you'll be getting is we've got people viewing from all over the world. So we have a couple different calendar options. So you just click that, you'll go to a page, you can pick, do you want a time zone in the US or the Americas, or do you want one more on the European side of things, the Middle East, that kind of region as well? We've got you covered. So all you have to do is do that, pick a time that suits you in the next, this is a fairly time limited sensitive situation. So we do feel that the best opportunity is within the next 1 to 2 weeks. So I would book it in soon, and we are getting practices. We've started the process already with our clients. So they've already taken up some of the early slots, but as soon as you're able to do it, to find out if this makes sense for your practice, if this is a good way to make some money, I would do it. And then just get the answer. If you're not, totally fine. If you are, then we can decide, okay, what's your list size? What do we expect you can get in terms of incremental revenue? And then we go from there. So that's really all we wanted to tell you about right now. I'm sure you have some questions, so we'll definitely handle that. But this is as simple as it is. You really just need to get on a call with us and find out if you can make this work in your practice. Because if you can, you basically, you know, you put in some money, you will get it back if you don't get that money back from a patient. So we tried to make this as easy as possible because we want as many clinics as possible to benefit from this, really. Do you guys have anything else to add about this?
I just, why do I feel so elated that you have a QR code there where, like, I remember just a while back, somebody showed me that, like, take out your camera, take out your phone, open up your camera and point it at the screen. I'm like, what? I always thought that QR codes were like, you had to open up a certain app. So just forgive me, my little tech, I'm geeking out right now. So please send some love to your team about doing that. But to that point, yes, I think that if I'm in your position right now as a clinic owner or as a surgeon or whatever your position is, in my mind, you really want to, you don't have to decide if you want to do this. What you really want to find out is this right for you. And I think that's why we want to move the next step, kind of like if you're talking to a LASIK patient. When I do webinars for surgeons and I do it with them, I basically say, you as a patient, your job is not to decide to have LASIK. It's to decide, do you want to find out if you're a candidate? And the same thing applies here in that you want to find out whether or not this is right for you. That's why we'll have that private conversation and we can just connect. And if it's not, no harm, no foul, not a problem. But I believe personally that this is one of the best campaigns I've ever seen, especially given the time that we're in right now, where a lot of you just, as Rod mentioned earlier, you've gone quite some time without revenue in the door. And I think the way that we are positioning this really is it's a win-win for the patient as well as for the practice as well. So Rod, did you want to add a point?
Actually, you know what? Oh, I forgot. I did not tell you. If you, yeah, Mike just mentioned you can take a picture of the code here, and you can do that, and that will just do its thing for you. It'll load the page. But I forgot to tell you, we have a link. If you don't like that, if you don't like that technology, we have a link, and I think somebody's putting it maybe in the chat right now. Yeah,
I already did.
Like, yeah,
I mean, but
okay.
let's be honest. We all want everyone to do the QR code because we're all tech.
That's way cooler. So
I think
yeah.
that might have just been selective
Just
that
do
you
that.
left that out. But yeah, it's okay. It's fine. Rod, I was going to pass it to you. Anything you wanted to say?
No, I absolutely couldn't stress the urgency of this any more than we have. And I think one thing that, I also want to make sure everybody understands is that we honestly think that this, in fact, isn't just a great way to make money. Okay, it is. There's no question. It's one of the most, as mentioned earlier, one of the most timely campaigns I've ever imagined seeing in this kind of setting, because I've never imagined this kind of setting. Nobody could have predicted this, but here we are. And now we have a campaign that is almost perfectly suited to the times. It couldn't be any better. But here's the thing, even more importantly than the campaign, and even more importantly than making money, is what I said earlier is the fact that all of you as doctors decided at one point that you wanted to get out there to help people, that you wanted to get into the fray to ensure that you could do everything in your power to keep people safe, to prevent them from getting ill, and to also help them when they did get ill. And here's the thing. One of the things that's always stuck with me is this idea that, that doctors must do no harm. It's the Hippocratic Oath. And I think to myself that if I was a doctor and if I was in a position where I needed to reopen my clinic because I desperately needed to re-enter the market because I had bills to pay, I had rent, I had staff, I had patients to treat and all that, I would have to give myself some pause. And I would have to think to myself, am I going in too early? Just because the government says I can, should I? Yeah, this is always the case. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. And I think, in fact, more importantly than just making cash, the key thing here is that I would consider this as a prerequisite to do everything in your power to keep everyone safe as much as possible before you have to reopen. Because if that's the only reason you're going to reopen is to make some money, then hey, we have that opportunity here for you. You don't have to put people at risk. You don't have to, be one of those folks who has to report at a later time because of contact tracing. Oh yeah, one of our patients was ill. I'm going to have to let every single, all my other patients, let them know that we had a patient who had coronavirus in our clinic. That's a big deal. You don't want to be in that situation. And again, I'm going to reiterate, it's not like 2 months ago we were any safer than we are today. In fact, if anything's the case, more people got this thing than ever before. And it's a virus. I don't need to talk to you about what a virus does or how a virus replicates. It's out there. So, I'm just thinking, if I was you, I'd be thinking, how can I do this in the safest way possible without putting anybody at risk? Because number one priority for me is the safety of my patients, the safety of my staff. Let's not forget the safety of myself. If I'm an ophthalmologist, I'm right there, right? You know how many ophthalmologists have been either ill or died as a result of this situation. And not only that, beyond that, the reputation that you as an honest actor in your community needs to uphold to ensure that you really mean it when you say, we put safety first. That's what this is about. Okay, we got to answer some questions. So let me see here. Do we have any questions? Do we have any questions? We do have some questions. Excellent. So this first question is, could this make me appear like I'm profiting from a pandemic? That's a very legitimate question. Does anybody want to answer that?
I mean, you've done such a good job, Rod, prior to this. I feel like you've almost already answered the question, but I think that the reality is that this is a win-win for everybody. And going back to the doing no harm, the reality is that given the fact of social distancing and the reduced capacity in clinic, the positioning of how you handle this on the telephone call with the patient, and you're not opening this up to everybody. This is not a public offer. This is people that have already expressed interest in your brand. And the way that you're doing it, really on that call, like back to Rod's point, this is in their best interest and in your best interest to do something like this, because you're not going to have the capacity to be able to serve as many patients as you want in your clinic. And so I think that when this is, in my mind, the most ethical way that you can be able to open up your practice. Laura, thoughts? Did you want to add anything to that?
Oh, Laura, you're on mute.
Yeah, I think you've started to address actually one of our next questions, which is that, yeah, I think this kind of goes along with what will this make me look desperate? You know, will it hurt my brand? And I think all of this is around branding and how do I appear in the market, and how am I presenting my offer? And partially, I mean, I mean, in a sense, I mean, I don't know what you guys think about this, but I think because I am happy actually that it is an offer that's done with existing patients, that is done over the phone, because I don't really want my clients to be publicly talking about this in the sense of, yes, we're lowering our price point, because we find that, you know, by offering discounts, you can train people to expect discounts long-term. Yeah. So I think that's not what we're suggesting. This isn't a typical discounting kind of environment if you choose to go with a monetary incentive. What we're saying is that you are offering something of value to people that have already invested time with you or have shown interest for you. And by doing that, you're going to them with a personal offer in a specific situation. And it is very situational. So I think that you're doing it out of care. You're doing it out of the respect for the people who have already expressed interest and providing them with something for them. So I think that by not publishing it, you're not making it available to everybody. It is specifically for them. So in that sense, I don't feel that you are hurting your brand. I wouldn't publicize it though, because yes, no. then you are sort of aligning yourself with this idea that you're offering a discount. And we tend to advise clinics, especially now, we're starting to work with all of our clients to increase the value they offer and start moving their prices upwards, because that's where the market is going. If you want to know more about that, watch our How to Survive the Coronavirus webinar, and you can find that online. So yeah.
Nick, do you want to add any points to what you've been saying?
One thing to also note, like this is not, if you're giving a discount, this is not like a typical discount, because if you just have, let's say, a spring special and you lower your pricing, well then later friends and family of that person that got that lower price will come around and say, hey, so-and-so got an offer for this, I want that same pricing. I'm sure if you do have ever done a discount, you have experienced this. In this case, it's different because they're not just receiving a special for nothing. They are receiving a special in return for prepaying for the procedure. So later, if someone finds out about this and say like, hey, so-and-so got the special, it's very easy to tell them, and people will understand, saying, hey, this was a unique situation. We were closed. They prepaid in full ahead of time. And it's not like running a regular special. So that's something to keep in mind as well, that this is really differentiated from regular discounting. And it's really more out of service to your patient, saying like, hey, it's difficult times right now. This is something to help you and help us at the same time. And in that way, I don't think it would be perceived as you're profiting from this pandemic either, because it's like the opposite of price gouging. Like you're saying, hey, it's hard times, so let's do something that works and helps everyone involved.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And I think in terms of what you say as well, you can communicate that in a way, just like Nick said, so that comes across. And actually, that's one of our next questions, is this sort of, how do I deal with these phone calls? Because I think that's probably one of the number one questions we've had so far is, okay, so we're getting a lot of phone calls booked. I'm not quite clear on what the process is to talk to people, and how do I get them to convert? So what are your thoughts, Rod and Mike, on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would answer that question in the same way that we've been talking about it here on this webinar. I mean, like, look, the key thing here is, if I'm the doctor and I'm having a conversation, or I'm, the patient counselor and having a conversation with somebody on the phone, I'd be saying, look, here's the thing, we know you showed an interest in surgery, and here's the thing, we want to help you. And we know as well that getting back to surgery is going to be a slow process, and it's going to be, you know, a process that's going to be in fits and starts. So, you know, what we want to do for you is we want to keep you safe. That's number one, right? When we offer you a surgery, that's our number one priority, is to keep you safe. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. So look, if you want the surgery, if you're really keen on this and you want to get this done as soon as possible, and look, I mean, when I'm talking to cataract patients, I know that they're really, really keen to get it done as soon as possible. But laser eye surgery patients might be in the same boat. They want to get this done, especially when, listen, they've just gone through potentially 2 months of lockdown, putting in contact lenses in and out, when people are telling them, don't touch your eyes. You know, they've been handling situations where they've broken their glasses and all of a sudden can't get them refilled because the optometrists are closed, the opticians are closed. So all of a sudden they have this newfound realization that, yeah, you know what, these glasses, these contact lenses, they really are not befitting a worldwide pandemic or any other kind of, you know, nasty situation I might fall under. So to them, I'd say, look, our key interest here is to get you out of those glasses and contact lenses. That hasn't changed. But number one, overriding all of that is to keep you safe. And in order to do this, we have a specific way of enabling you to get what it is that you want, while also getting what we want. And by giving you an opportunity here to pay for your surgery in advance, we put you in the queue, or potentially we give you a little discount in order for you to make that a little easier for you. And I honestly, I don't think any patient would be like, oh wow, you know, I'm shocked and appalled that you're providing me with extra value in this instance. I think they would all be like, thank you so much. And that's exactly what we've heard from the patients actually receiving these phone calls. So I would rest assured that this is absolutely nothing to worry about. And on top of it all, I am more than happy to provide training. I mean, I've trained thousands of people on how to handle patients over the phone. I've trained thousands of people on how to handle patients at appointments. I know how these patients think. So I'm more than happy to offer video training as part of this program so that you know exactly what to say and how to say it. Okay.
I think we keep typing your questions in. We'll keep going and keep answering them as we go. I think a couple of people have asked for the QR code again. So let me just grab that.
I told you guys, it's all about the QR code.
Yeah, there you go. Just take a photo of that on your phone, and it should bring up the link. We'll also throw the link again. Maybe somebody can throw that link into the chat again so that you've got that handy. So yeah, just get your onboarding call booked with us sometime in the next few days, and we'll figure out if it's right for you or not. But yeah, let's get some more questions answered.
So we have another question that's, well, actually, you can leave it back on that slide. That's fine.
Sure.
Why not just wait to reopen like everybody else? You guys want to handle that?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like we have that if you think about it from a medical practice perspective, we have that duty to be able to be present in our market and to be able to help our patients when able. And I think I go back to when I'm thinking about the reality that we're in right now. It's if you wait until everyone opens, the challenge is that backlog of patients, and you want to have to talk a little bit of numbers here. You want to have a highest amount of average revenue per appointment coming back into this in order for you to be able to kind of get through that trough of no revenue that you've been through for quite some time. And I think waiting to reopen back up means that for a lot of it, you'll be bringing in people that are coming in for a consult, may or may not be ready to move forward and have surgery. So that limited amount of consultation time, that limited amount of time in office, wouldn't it be better to have as many of those patients that are coming in for that to already be prepaid for their procedures? Because again, it's a very limited resource that you've got. And I think especially coming out of this, we've had no revenue. I think it's really essential to have something that enables you to kind of get the train moving relatively quickly. Laura?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And also, I think that question to me, behind that question is maybe the idea that, well, I don't need to do a campaign like this because if I open up, I'm just going to like hit my stride and it's just going to kind of go back to the way it was, 6 weeks or 2 months ago. And I think what we're saying, if we haven't been super clear, is it's going to be a slow trickle upwards. So yes. we really, I mean, basically it's common sense and cash flow, I would say, because you're not going to sort of open your doors and see this flood of people coming back. That's not, it's gonna take a while for people to, if you think about it, we're adding more noise to the market, right? So we had that first period of what we call panic on the phases of the coronavirus. And basically during panic, don't you remember, nobody, like in terms of interest online, it just tanked. Like nobody was looking for LASIK. That it was over for a very short period. And we predicted this, and it was in our model because people were changing. And whenever there's change, people take time to readapt to a routine. So if you think about it, once we go out of lockdown, it's not going to be as dramatic. Obviously, we kind of know more of what to expect when we get our old life-ish back. It's going to be a new normal. It's not going to be normal, but we're going from, you know, a new routine that we have now finally established at home, and we're going to be starting a new routine. And that means we have to put, you know, willpower and brain power into this new process of resetting up our life, which means, again, we lose their attention. The market is going to shift again, and they're not going to be looking for LASIK during that time period. They are going to be looking for it now in the boredom and the hope phases, because now they've settled into a new routine at home. Now they kind of are getting, well, we're all getting itchy, aren't we, at home? We want to get our old life back. And so now you're giving them the opportunity to feel like they're moving their life forward. Like, it's like, I can do this from the safety of my home, but I can actually, you know, get this going. I can make the decision, you know, so that I don't have to handle that once things open up. I've done that, you know, it's like, tick, I've got, yeah, LASIK, I did want it. Okay, fine. I'm going to make the decision now, because, you know, you only live once. And once I'm out of this lockdown, I want to live. So I think this is a very psychologically good time to do this. So you could wait, but you're not going to see that volume that you would get now. So that's why, again, we can't stress enough, this is time limited. There's a great opportunity now for you to get this revenue coming in and to get people booked in, so that when you open, you can get a head start. Because if you do wait, you won't have that kind of flurry of activity, of surgical activity at the beginning, which you can get now and pre-book. So this is the opportunity.
Great answer. I'll tackle the next one, which is, what incentive should I give? Really, this is a short answer. I think that's where when you schedule a call with us, and if assuming it's a right fit on both sides to move forward, we'll counsel you on that. We'll provide you. We'll go through, what is your current price per eye. We need to look at you know, different packages that you have. So we'll be able to give you and let you know what are other similar practices doing for their offer. So that's something that we'll handle on a case by case basis. Rod, did you want to mention anything to that?
No, apart from the fact that, look, you know, the incentive, like we've said several times already, doesn't have to be price-based.
Yes.
So, you know, it's super, super important to consider. And I think actually this relates to the other question that we have in the list here, which is, you know, does this work for cataract surgery? And yeah, I think the notion of giving people the spot in the queue, you know, has never been, you know, more attractive when you're facing, like, I'll give you an example. In the UK, you know, we do 50,000 cataract surgeries a month. And with lockdown, I mean, you know, we've been locked down since March 23rd, one day before our webinar, in fact, last time. And yeah, in all that time, there's been no cataract surgeries except for the very, very, very few, like handfuls, really. So I think the issue here is to consider the fact that I mean, and most ophthalmologists I've spoken to, you know, because I speak to them every single day, they're on it. They understand, yeah, there's going to be a huge pent up demand. But look, wouldn't you love to get in front of that huge pent up demand? Wouldn't you love to be, you know, to not come out of this from a cold start? I mean, yes, of course, some of you are doing virtual consultations, and that's an excellent beginning. Excellent beginning. We couldn't be more behind that. But here's the next step. If those virtual consultations, you know, if you happen to be doing virtual consultations, here's the thing: you still have to pay traffic to get to those paid consultations to make it work, right? But here's the thing about this campaign: you don't have to pay social. You don't have to pay ads. You just pay for the text message to be sent out, and it's risk-free. There's nothing risk-free about ads on social or Google. Okay, so here's the thing. This is an opportunity for cataract surgeons to, again, assuming you have a list.
I would say, yeah, if I can just jump in there on that, Rod, I think the challenge with cataract surgeons is, obviously you're not doing, you know, a lot of interrupt marketing. You tend to get referral based, and maybe a little bit of self-pay coming in. But you may not have a big list of people that have sort of come in, kicked the tires and gone away. I mean, most people, when they get on the cataract bus, they stay on the bus, right? But what you might have is a list of, if you do more general ophthalmology, you might have a list of people, or maybe you've been seeing people and they're coming in, maybe that cataract wasn't right before, but you kind of know they're progressing down the pathway. Well, this is the time to start to put out some feelers with those people. So that's the list I would look at. So we would talk to you about that and find out, okay, of the people in your practice, maybe it is time to sort of put out a list to the right group of people that they can start to think about this and just see who's interested. And that's really what this is about, to get a ping back to see, yeah, does it work? And as we said, I think for cataract, we know maybe it won't be as likely. And maybe you will be the one practice that will get your money back. Maybe it won't work for you, but I feel like if you have a big practice and you deal with people in that age group, and you do know you've got a number of people that would normally be having treatment or coming through, this should likely work for you as well, because they can, pre-book the spot. And I mean, we know anecdotally, again, this is just anecdotally, but at the beginning, like right around the time of lockdown, like the first few days before, people were starting to get told, okay, your surgery has been postponed. And, they started to phone around our private clients and started to say, can you fit me in? And they were, a little panicky, like, okay, I'll do it. I was going to go on the government, the free program, but actually now I want to go on and do it privately. So yeah, we know that the demand is going to be there. So I would test the waters. I mean, if you based on what we've said now, and based on knowing your patient group, does it make sense? Do you feel that those people are in your list, enough of them, that this would make sense? And keep in mind, how many would you need to prepay for you to feel like this, is worthwhile? When we asked this around to try to figure out the price, we realized that, yes, for most people, if they could just pay for itself, that this is a good opportunity. So if that makes sense to you, yeah, I would try it.
I think that specifically addresses the question, is how, what if my list is too small? And
yeah.
It's like, look, we calculate about 1% return on this. And that means that if you have a list of about 300, right, then you're probably going to get 3 people paying for surgery. That's not, on a cataract basis, that's not small potatoes. That's especially like, in this time. So, we think that a list of 300 is probably the minimum place to start, but that's only on the basis of, the 1% number. You could do better. And on top of that, it's, even if you're doing that and you say, let's say, for example, the cataract fees, equal close to what you paid or more, you're making out well on this, you're ahead, and that's what this is about. So
yeah, no, for sure. So while we wait for more questions to come in, again, I think you know what I'm going to say. If you haven't yet, I'm sure the people that are still here, I think some of you have already jumped on and you're booking those, so that's great. If you haven't done it yet, make sure you grab this so that you get a copy of this. I don't know if we've got another couple of points to share, but we may not show this again. So just grab it so that you get it on your phone. And then, we'll also send you the link in the chat again, just so that you've got it. So yeah, any final questions coming in?
Yeah, go on.
Go ahead. One, I just said, that's okay. Is there a list size limit? I think that that question is probably best answered on a call, just to kind of understand what exactly you have on your list, make sure that it's scrubbed properly. But I think that we had set it at roughly 2,500. And then after that, because there's additional fees for sending them out, then we can kind of handle that on a case-by-case basis. But Nick, did you want to add any points to that, my friend?
Yeah, so 2,500, that's US based. In other countries, we'll have to do it on a case-by-case basis.
Yep.
Because some countries have very high texting fees. So yeah, that's something that we can talk about on that call.
Yeah.
And I think there's one question I saw, what if I'm out of lockdown already? Anyone want to answer that? Or should I?
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, we haven't done this campaign with anyone who's already out of lockdown, but I don't think it would be too difficult to re-engineer this campaign to where it's a reopening campaign, where we say, hey, we've been closed, we're reopening, and we have a backlog of people who are coming in who already scheduled surgery for the time where we weren't able to do surgery. So we kind of have we are a little backed up. But if you're, and then it's basically the same thing, offer them some special in return for prepaying, so that as soon as you're not backed out anymore, you can get them in on the surgery schedule. So that's probably how I'd handle it. But I'm curious to hear if anyone has other thoughts.
Well, I think it's like you have a resource that is now in scarce availability, and that's your time. And that is your ability to have people to come into your practice. And I think regardless of the financial benefit, which we've already talked about, I really do think that there is validity in talking to the patient about that. You can't see as many people in the practice. And I think that this gives them that opportunity, because to have the procedure done sooner than if they were to try to wait to come in for that consultation and all that stuff. And I think that that is, for some people, quite an important point. And, you know, to me, I think that communicating that to the patients in a way that makes sense to them, I think is another point that's worth mentioning. Laura, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's really it, is adjusting the messaging. I think you've got to, whenever you're looking at acclimatizing anything from one situation to another, I think it's really making sure that you have a good because. And I think that's what this is about, actually, is having this exchange of value and having a nice reason for doing it, and being able to give that value in exchange for this incentive, in exchange for the prepayment. I think as long as you just shift it around during the opening, offer, I think that's a great suggestion, Nick, that you just change it up around opening, and that also makes sense. So it's just making it make sense. So making the whole patient journey make sense, so that people understand what you're asking them to do, and that it is a reasonable thing that a practice might do. And I think that's what this wording will be in the text campaign, and it's what will be trained to you or your team, whoever's handling the phone calls, so that they do it in a way that it makes sense. It's a healthy conversation, back and forth. They understand it's a win-win and why you're doing it.
Yeah, personally, I as a digital marketer for many years, I've been very email centric, and for me, I've been completely awakened by the notion of text campaigns as a result of this particular campaign, because to me, the results that we're seeing are just so good that I am now have decided, in every single form we move forward with, in every form we put on a website, we're asking for mobile numbers, because we, so this kind of approach can be done again and again and again, and I think honestly that if we don't start collecting mobile numbers in addition to emails, because, we collect emails and names because it's a less friction, right? We get more people inquiring. But I think if we don't ask for mobile numbers, we're missing a major trick in enabling our ability to get right into people's heads. Because the last time I opened an email literally was yesterday. The last time I opened my mobile because of a text was actually during this webinar, I must admit. So honestly, we're all addicted to our mobile phones.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, that's a really good point. If you are one of these practices that you're thinking, okay, I haven't been, gathering mobile phone numbers. If there's anything you take away from this, is that I would have taken you up on this opportunity, but I don't have a big enough list. That, what Rod just said, is so important. Please start adding it to your forms, your opt-ins now, because this is a big opportunity. It will continue to be one during the next, the years to come, but certainly in the next year. If you start now with what you're doing in your marketing, you could be having a list that's big enough to deal with in a few months if you do it right. So yeah, good point.
I think a question that some will certainly ask, especially in Europe, in the EU, where we have GDPR, is it okay to share my list with you? And look, we've been actually at the forefront of helping our clients become GDPR compliant on their websites, in their forms, in their privacy policies, ensuring that we are qualified as GDPR compliant data processors. So look, that's not an issue. Just like we can take patients' names and emails, we can take their mobile numbers too. There's no difference between a mobile number and an email address. So it's not an issue at all. Don't worry about that. We have everything that's necessary in order to keep you covered as a data controller. We won't let you down on that. In fact, I would say we're among the best at that. So yeah, consider that closed.
Yeah, did we answer all the questions, or did we have any other ones come in?
Yeah, there's just one more question. We don't accept payment plans and encourage patients to sign up for credit. Aha, good question. At this time of financial restraints, do you encourage we still do that along with the incentive offer? Any thoughts on that?
It's a great question, but I'll comment from experience that I've had with certain clinics is that a couple of practices that have used this approach have done a specific discount if they pay cash credit card up front, and then they having a modest financing fee if they wanted to be able to use financing, just so that it's equitable on both sides. So the offer of really and that's a judgment call. I mean, you could as a practice say, look, get it, we'll do you a solid. You can still have that same fee if you do via care credit, but that's option A. Option B is I've seen other practices do a few $100s more, or whatever it is you think is fair for them to be able to do financing. Laura?
Yeah, no, exactly the same answer. I think that's the typical, what we call a drop. So in terms of you always have a first offer that you're asking for with your patients. So if the primary offer is the one where it's for a prepayment all up in front, and then if they're asking for something else in addition, you can consider that, but then you have to ask them for something in exchange. It's not just sort of, oh, I'll do whatever you like. You know, oh, you'd like this price? Okay, sure. You know, you have a price, you have something that you need. You're obviously offering something in exchange for that good price. So yeah, absolutely. You could say, okay, well, we could look at doing that. But obviously there's financing fees. We've already dropped our surgery fee to a price that we feel is fair. So we would have to add a financing fee on top of that. Is that something that you would want to look at? And if you do, great. If you don't, yeah, then it's not going to work. So I think you have to ask for something in exchange, but I think that's a great thing to do. Yeah, if you wanted to do that, I think that's fair, and it's still a deal. I think that's the thing. If it's still a deal for them and they're financing it, so they're getting that fitting in their cash flow, then I think that's still a win-win. And again, that's what you're after. You want that arrangement to be win-win. So you're not sort of losing because you're further discounting to get, to give them the financing. So I think you got to protect yourself there, but they're still getting a good deal. So I think they should be happy.
Okay, very good, very good. Look, it looks like we're out of questions, guys. And I think that this is, I mean,
we're well timed. Yeah, that's great.
We might have in fact answered every question, and that's lovely. And whether we answered your questions,
a little bit, right? We're all shocked.
Yeah, a little bit. We can talk for hours, and in fact, we sometimes do for 8-hour practice development workshops. So there you go. 90 minutes is amazingly short.
Yeah. So let's finish up. Look, we don't want to take any more time than we need to. Yeah. We definitely want to encourage you to, again, like we said at the beginning, there's no need to decide right now, right? This is similar to the way you ask your patients, let's just have a conversation. Let's just figure this out, whether it's right for you. See if this is something that fits you. It's not for everybody, but if it's for you, we'll be the first person to accept you in open arms and make sure that you have everything you need in order to make this work for you, so that you can execute and then get the results that you most want. Okay, so that's what the onboarding call is all about, and you can click that QR code that was on this last slide. I think you've seen it for long enough, and no doubt you got your phone out and whipped it out and try that cool tech. But look, I just want to finish with in closing a final comment is that, again, a little earlier I was talking a little bit about the idea of safety, and I think that's important. But at the same time, we always have to consider that just because you guys haven't been able to offer surgery or do surgery doesn't in any way mean that your patient's desire for what they get after the surgery has in any way disappeared. They want it. In fact, I would imagine they'd want it more than ever. And I believe that with that forefront in your mind, with that assumption in your view, when you have these conversations, you will find that you will experience the same things that we've been hearing the doctors who've tried this experience already. They have found patients thank them. Patients, even if they're not interested, even if they've been laid off, and they said, look, doc, I have no more money and there's nothing I can do, but thank you so much for the offer. I really appreciate it. At the very least, for those patients that you haven't yet been in touch with, if they hear from you with an offer of generosity, an offer of help, I think, whether they say yes or no, that's good PR. That's good PR. So this is a great opportunity to reach out. It's also not, as I've said already, it's a great opportunity to help yourself as well. It's about a win-win solution, and doing so in such a way that completely aligns with the guiding principles that I know every good ethical doctor has at the forefront, which is do no harm. So with that, I'd like to thank the panelists for joining us, and I'd like to thank the audience for sharing this time with us and listening to us and keeping your minds open. We really hope to hear from you on these onboarding calls. Yeah, Nick, thank you very much for chiming in and providing us with the answers that you have. Mike, as always, super insightful commentary about, especially given the fact that you've actually tried this, and so has Nick.
Yeah.
And actually see, boots on the ground, have actually seen this work for your clients, and we couldn't be more happy for them.
And got us excited. I think both of you got us really excited that there's a way for practices to kind of take the next step to make revenue before opening up, which is frankly what we've all been looking for. So yeah, thanks for providing that.
Absolutely. So look, I think, and of course, thank you to Laura for all of your insight in terms of how this fits into the greater picture, because, again, this is not just a tactic. This is definitely an approach to get people re-engaged, to reopen, but, to look at this as a long-term view and to think about, the overall, patient journey and how all of that interrelates and how this is completely aligned with the acts of service that we're attempting to promote here. So look, thank you to everybody. And with that, thank you to all of you again. And we'll see you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Great to see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.